Another type of call, and this is by no means just modern, but it is also modern. It applies to today, and that's hereditary. Uh, the shamanic vocation is passed on through hereditary, through blood ties, through ancestry. Okay, if you feel this calling, chances are one of your parents did, if not both. And chances are that one of your children, if not all of them, will also feel this. Okay, these are like soul streams. Okay, and souls incarnate in the same soul stream. So you can recognize that maybe your one of your parents or both of your parents should have been shamans, and that is kind of, if they should have been but weren't, then they kind of pass it on to you, and then you have extra hard work to do to make up for that lost time and that extra burden. But also maybe your parents are actually like initiated, in which case it's obvious, like that's your inheritance in a way. So it can be passed on, and that's the case with me. My mother has this spark, and my daughter has this spark. So it is being passed on, and my mother's father had this spark. So it has been passed on through through hereditary means, through hereditary. I'm sorry. So related to that is also kind of like less like father, son, mother, daughter, like passed on in that way. You can be called in a kind of ancestral way. You can be elected by ancestral shamans. And in this case, the call would usually come in the form of a dream or vision. So this dovetails with a dream or vision call. Why? Well, usually the ancestral lineage needs help, right? Like the ancestral lineage needs new representatives, needs people to perhaps bring the knowledge out into the world, or to preserve the knowledge, or to transition the knowledge to a new age. Ancestral knowledge needs constant upkeep, and it needs to keep finding new avenues into the modern culture. So there are a number of people now that are perhaps like, North American, or like white European, or what have you, just not necessarily just white, but like non-indigenous people, like European or North American or South American or Australian or Russian or Indian or Chinese or whatever, like part of a major civilization that actually has its own territory on a map, like part of a nation. And these people perhaps feel called to go to indigenous peoples and become wisdom keepers and become initiated into indigenous lines that have long ancestry, to preserve and update it and carry it forward into the new age. And other people may feel called to go deeper into their own ancestry. Like I'm of pretty much white European descent, colonial South American, which traces back to Spain, and British, which traces back to Europe. And so that is my ancestry, and so I strive to learn and study my ancestral knowledge through alchemy and hermeticism. And so Hermes kind of tapped me and said, you're going to be an ancestral bearer, a bearer of ancestral wisdom. But let's say that you're Chinese, and you feel called by this kind of ancestral Chinese shamans to bring the ancestral wisdom back, because current Chinese culture desperately needs it. Or maybe you have indigenous roots, or maybe you have, maybe you're African American, and you feel called to tap into the shamanistic traditions of a certain part of Africa. And you feel tapped by that lineage to bring it now to the contemporary African American culture. Something like that. Okay, so ancestral wisdom has to keep bridging itself, and so that's a kind of bridge call, and is to be sort of chosen to do that bridge work. And so this is included all in the being like a cultural call, being subconsciously elected by the needs of a culture. So all of North American culture is in soul loss, and it needs general North American shamans, or shamanic individuals, to be more precise. And so the overall condition of soul loss in our culture creates an overall condition of needing more shamanic individuals. But there's subcultures, like I was just speaking about, like African American culture, or Chinese American, or Japanese American, or one who has First Nations blood or Native American blood, all of these are subcultures. And each culture exists in the astral, and it has its place in the astral, and it has its it has its shamans that have kind of solidified their higher bodies and are still working for the benefit and the evolution of the ancestral lines. And they're still working. Just as there are ancestral demons, there are ancestral shamans working in the spirit worlds and tapping new candidates and new tenders of the lineages. Okay, so that is a general call, is to be subconsciously called or elected by the needs of a culture. More specifically, you can actually have an encounter with a spiritual teacher, a shaman, a guru, or an initiate, and have an opportunity to learn with them. Maybe they like you for some reason, and you have an opportunity to learn from them. Coming into contact with an individual like this is a call. It's kind of an open door call. Like the days of like a guru like picking you, like be distrustful of any sort of teacher that like fawns on you and that says you are my chosen apprentice, and I got a message that you are supposed to be my student, and da-da-da-da. No. Beware, okay? In the modern age, in the modern condition, it's up to the initiative of the student to seek out the teacher. And the teacher can make opportunities, but the opportunities are always going to be proving grounds so that the student can continue to show their worth. And like a true teacher of true shamanic knowledge or a true initiate is a living filter. Okay, and they're at the tip of this narrow filter, and they create all these barriers so that the people that pass through are increasingly more suitable to be taught the full extent of what the teacher can teach. But to have an encounter with, but all these all of these calls are funnels. Okay, like to be an actual fully initiated shamanic individual, it's very few that actually make it that far, and so that's the tip of the funnel. So all of these are like that, but this one very much so. If you have an encounter with a shaman, guru, initiate, spiritual teacher, you have an opportunity to learn from them, that goes hand in hand with voluntary seeking. Okay, you can, out of your own free will, be a good student. And if you're a good student, the teacher will kind of give you a little more. If you keep showing yourself, you keep proving yourself, you'll keep moving up, and the teacher will reveal more and more. So just to have an encounter with one of those and have an opportunity to learn from them is a type of call that goes hand in hand with voluntary seeking. On the other hand, there's an involuntary call, and I've spoken about this a lot already, and that is trauma, either through violence or often through sexual abuse. Being forced, what that amounts to is being forced to experience the demonic, or being abducted into the underworld, a realm of the lower astral, or taken to the underworld, as we call it. Your soul, part of your soul is being taken to the underworld. That's part of the wounded healer initiation. The soul loss call. That's part of the soul loss call. Trauma is a call. I mean, that's a constructive way of thinking about it. You're like, okay, I've suffered trauma, I've suffered soul fragmentation, I've suffered soul loss. That is a call to retrieve it. Now, it's a voluntary call. You don't have to retrieve it. You can stay in your state. It's not like it's not as acute as a psychotic episode where like your psyche's shattering and you have to reforge it. You have no choice. Trauma, people can cope with trauma not in healthy ways. They can bury it or live in their fragmented state. But trauma is a kind of involuntary call to a voluntary opportunity to perform a soul retrieval on yourself. But this is particularly common now, and this is a constructive way of dealing with the truly unfortunate, even tragic things that befall you in your life. And it's a constructive way of thinking about it, that your higher self called these seeming tragedies to you in order to initiate you according to your karma, in order to initiate you according to your potential. So if you were traumatized in a certain way, give it a really empowering flip by saying to yourself, I called this to myself because I am supposed to really be a wounded healer in this particular area and really help a lot of people. Okay, that is a very empowering way of viewing this trauma as a call, as an invitation to be a healer, as an invitation to learn how to do soul retrieval work. Another type of call is a sexual identity and sexual orientation crisis. In indigenous cultures, they don't have this same framework that we have. A lot of indigenous cultures, I'm not an authority, I'm not an anthropologist, I'm a total dilettante. Whenever I say indigenous cultures, I'm just kind of like operating at a Wikipedia level of competence, and not even. But I do know that certain cultures, Indonesia and in North America, they have different way of viewing gender and viewing orientation. Some say there are five genders, not like two genders and then a couple aberrations, but no, like five genders. I don't know the name of the culture, the indigenous culture, that has this idea of a berdache or two-spirit. But if you have this kind of nature, whether you like have a transgendered nature or just a gay nature, like if you're gay, if you like, prefer like those of the same sex, you're sexually attracted to those. If you're a man, sexually attracted to men. If you're a woman, sexually attracted to women, or both, then you're kind of out of this binary system and you're in the liminal space, and you can be a mediator and you can be a kind of go-between. So there's a reason why many of the most brilliant people in theater and in fashion and in the arts and in dance and in the expressive arts and in dramatic arts and even in the fine arts are gay or like outside of the binary gender system, because they're already in liminal space. They have this function in the culture of being mediators between the spirit world and the material world, or they hold tensions of opposites. So if this is starting to happen to you in adolescence, so I'm not saying that every person who's gay is supposed to be a shamanic individual. Just like not everybody who has a psychotic episode is meant to be a shamanic individual. Not everybody with a mood disorder is meant to be a shamanic individual. However, there's a correlation. So if you're going through a kind of orientation crisis, you realize maybe you're a feminine soul in a male body, or a male soul in a female body, or you're a what do they call it? A switch. You can be male, you can be female, you can perform your gender, you're a shapeshifter. Okay, when this starts to onset, this is like an opportunity to explore the shamanic dimensions of gender, shamanic dimensions of sexuality, because sexual energy and shamanism are intimately related to each other. So with the onset of a sexual identity or sexual orientation or gender identity or gender orientation is a kind of opportunity to go along with that, to go into a type of shamanic initiation.
So which of these had you nodding your head? Yeah, that happened to me, totally. And that happened to me too. And that also happened to me. Oh my God, like all of these things practically happened to me. How many of these do you relate to? Please share in the comments below. And also, I invite you, if you really related to this and you're continuing to relate to this, I invite you to check out the online community that I've created that is made up entirely of people that shake their head to these symptoms and signs and triggers and dangers and that really relate to this material. Imagine an online community entirely comprised of souls who are undergoing a modern shamanic crisis, a modern shamanic awakening, a community of modern shamanic candidates. If you're curious to learn more, check out the information page. The link is in the comments below. And you might have noticed I look a little different here than in the videos. That's because these videos were shot back in 2017. It's now 2023, 6 years on, and I've been through a whole lot since then. So enjoy the rest of this series about the signs and symptoms of the modern shamanic call and the modern shamanic awakening.